Hello and welcome. John Pryor here with the IP podcast, the Trade Secret Hub. I'm really pleased today to welcome my long-standing friend and colleague and co-worker, as was 10 years ago, Tim Schnurr. Hey Tim, how you doing?
John, thanks for having me. Always great to see you. It's been it's amazing we've known each other over a decade here, but great to be on. And we usually fighting these time zones and these platforms and getting a one-to-one conversation. So it's awesome to get in touch and talk face to face again, because we're usually quite entangled in each other's LinkedIn blogs and a lot of opinions. So
so you can tell me how you got into IP and where you've been since. But we met at ICAP Patent Brokerage, and we met on a really cold winter's evening in Brussels when we were attending. Actually, it was a negotiation on a company that was distressed, and we were able to sell their patents and give them 3 months of payroll. So it's quite a considerable story. But yeah, that was and I think that was 2010, Tim, when we met. So that's quite a 14 years ago. But our paths came together. They then diverged, and then it seems like the last couple of years we've started to intersect again. And I've always been in the IP thread, and you were in IP. Tell me a little bit about your background prior to the IP, because I think that's quite interesting as well. And then you moved into information security and IP, and then you're sort of doing both, I think, now, but primarily probably on the information security side of things. So give me a little bit of your history there.
No, absolutely. So spent a couple of years in financial services, hedge fund world. Always been in the New York City kind of like tri-state area where a lot of these hedge funds and investment vehicles have been. But did that for a while. Was in debt and equity research, and interesting company, right? ICAP, which a lot of people don't know them because they're a competitor with Cantor Fitzgerald. A lot of people are familiar with them, unfortunately, because of 9/11. They were, ICAP was in the second floor of the building, and Cantor Fitzgerald was in the top floors of those buildings. But they're direct competitors, and they're involved in trading everything, intermediary of debt, right? Interest rates, swaps, currency. They got the company continued to grow. They got much bigger into patents, right? Because they were doing kind of like, as you said, you can trade anything: pork futures, rail, green credits, uranium, if you name it, and if it could be traded, they traded it. And they brought in this IP company called Ocean Tomo, which is a company that was known for patent expertise, but really they developed a patent auction. So John and I both kind of got hired into that in, I think it was 2010, as you said. It was red hot, right? I mean, just patents, huge patent portfolio selling.
Well, Northstar just sold for 4.3 billion, right?
Yeah. I mean, just amazing, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have this end of and most people don't know this, but patents are worth 15 to 20 years, 18 years. So you had all these great inventions in the 90s, right? The e-commerce patents from like the Walker Digital portfolio, Priceline.com. You had all these kind of early smartphone patents, like Nokia. You mentioned it, BlackBerry, Nortel, right? So all these things kind of coming, being surpassed in the market by disrupting companies from Silicon Valley. And you had all these massive portfolios, great ideas, great inventions that really kind of kicked off the internet age being sold at auction. Ocean Tomo happened to be in the middle of it and was really there to kind of help people transact these patents, like a Sotheby's, Christie's auction. John was a fantastic auctioneer as well. But yeah, no, just an interesting time of patent deal making, just because the shifts, these dynamic shifts of kind of the early internet startups that really kind of like had their rise in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and they sold off all that IP. So that was a lot of fun, right? I mean,
Yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun. It was a really good time, and the peak of the pound market. I think we were there through the peak of the pound market. It was very exciting times. You know,
Yeah.
4.3 billion pounds dollars for 6,000 pounds was the Nortel transaction, which is just crazy, absolutely crazy. But as you said, you know, competitive context, market forces, stuff coming together at the same time. You know, it happens. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a good run. We had a great time together. We did some good business, and then things kind of changed, and you know, the market changed because the law changed, and there's been a lot, and there is still a lot of hot political dispute, debate around about some of those changes and whether they're favoring the big tech companies over the small entrepreneur. And I think that's a really, really interesting topic, because I think you and I, Tim, we'll get onto your information security in a second, but you and I, Tim, look at this and we go, that's not really in the best interest of the small tech guy, because if he goes to court with his patents, he thinks he's got his patent, bunch of patents, hopefully, and he's been granted by the USPTO, and then he puts his money where his mouth is. He goes to court. Then what happens next, Tim? What happens next these days?
Yeah, I mean, so he goes to court, and court takes a long time, 5 years, a couple $1 million. You got to raise that money. You've got to raise money from someone else, right? And most people would call this venture capital or angel or whatever. The public companies call these patent trolls. They have a different term for it. So, this narrative of the little guy or companies suing the big companies really created this atmosphere in the US in the early 2010s. There was a big congressional act called the America Invents Act, drastically changed the way patents were enforced, right? So you had an invalidity kind of motion, patent and trial appeal board, right? The PTAB, which before you sued anybody, if you're a small inventor, you'd actually have to go back to the patent office, and they would, check under the hood and make sure that the patent was actually novel. And we know what happens. A lot of things got thrown out. So thinking about
19%, only 19% of patents that go to PTAB come back unscathed.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. So survival, right? Like, the internet cuts both ways, right? So like, this isn't wild, right? Think about, like, you come up with this novel idea, and just like they have in cybersecurity, they have people around the world searching for vulnerabilities in code and whatnot. Well, guess what happens in patent world? You can do a patent search, right? And basically you can crowdsource this out there, and someone might find something in a small library in Indonesia or something like that, written in a foreign language that looks like it's the same idea as yours. Tough luck, So, and they'll give these bounties, right, for people to find invalidate patents, and that's just kind of
the old joke. The old joke at Nokia, right? It's they do three things with an invention: they patent it, or they trade secret it, or they publish it.
Right.
Only they publish it in Finnish, and only 4 people in the world speak Finnish. And they publish it in the Finnish Pig Breeders Journal, because only 5 people read that magazine, right? So,
yeah. So it's a ticking time bomb, right? So like you go back later, and they've got their it's like a time capsule, right? Like, so yeah. So anyway, early 2010s, like this massive shift in patents really got watered down, right? Patents that people were buying them from smaller hands, big companies buying them because they were powerful weapons. They dramatically got diluted. Our business was extremely big, right? Like we had over 20 people. It got smaller over the years. It got more difficult to trade. There was I don't want to get into kind of the antitrust perspectives, but there was collusion of buyers, right, together buying. So that, I don't know how fair we would consider that. So, the patent market went from volume, right? Like volume and pricing went down dramatically, right? Like, so yeah.
But Tim, you've piqued my interest. I've got to mention the whole Micron thing, because that to me was illustrative of some of the weaknesses in the whole system at the moment,
Right.
but also, illustrative of what was going on at the time. And with Micron, they mysteriously transferred, I can't remember, was it 1,500 or 3,000 patents to the top patent litigator, a guy called John Damaris. And that was it. It wasn't visible to the public, right? Because these patent assets were homegrown, they were organic, they weren't on the balance sheet. So you can give them to John Damaris and nobody's any the wiser, certainly not the shareholders. They don't know.
Right.
Nobody knows. We don't know. Nobody's saying. There must have been some sort of kickback, but there you go. John, have some patents. He goes off and sues. I think he made 300 million in like the first 18 months of it litigating these patents.
I think he sued at least 100 companies. Yeah, right off the bat. Yeah.
I mean, and we were involved. I mean, it's some public record. We were involved in selling a covenant not to sue for $40 million, right? Here's a covenant. If you buy this for $40 million, then that guy, John Damaris, is not going to sue you, right?
That's right.
I mean, but the point I really want to make is that was invisible to the shareholders, most of that. So, the sweating and the monetization of those IP assets, because it's not on the balance sheet, is hidden and it's gone away. And of course, what happened later down the road, and whether this was, I write this as though it's part of a great strategic plan. They then sued LP to Memory. LP to Memory went bust. Who came in? White Knight. Buy them up. Micron. Bang.
Yeah, no, it was wild. And that covenant not to sue idea was really kind of innovative, I think, in legal strategy, right? It's really just a license, right? It's but this ability to, let's face it, when things go to court, who wins? Lawyers, right? Like, who gets the most amount of money? I can't think of a case where the lawyers don't get the majority of the money that passes hands. So this idea to bring market forces together to, that company that paid $40 million, how much would have paid to defend against that motion in court?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And I think we're really on to something. It's really unfortunate, but as the law world knows, they fended off that innovation, that disruption in the market, right? The market force is basically selling licenses, right? And I think we've seen a lot of things try to do this, right? Like, I remember, Ocean Tomo had another IPXI. What was the kind of like, they were trying to do the same thing, right? Trying to create the ability to license patents without litigation, right? Like, it's just, make this so simple and so cheap that the person infringing the patent will just buy it, right? But like, nope. Like, here we are 15 years, 10 years later, which is just crazy because like I said, everyone thinks that they overpaid for that, but I think they I mean, how much would they have paid in defense, right? So how much would they have paid?
I think it was just straight in. That was his bid. He sat right at the front and didn't hide who he was.
Right.
And he bid, boom, 40 million, and everybody else went, whoa, okay, you can have that. Yeah.
So that was an incredible thing. It seemed to fizzle, and I'll tell you, this is a little inside information. Another reason it didn't work, right? There was a problem here with call it anonymity a little bit, right? The ability to bid anonymously. Let's just walk through the motions of how this happened, right? So, John Damaris worked with our company to put this thing up for sale, and someone bid on it. Well, guess what happened a couple months down the road if he tried to do the same thing? The attorneys from all the big companies subpoenaed us, every single one, right? They wanted every little bit of information, every little bit of communication. So you couldn't actively try to sell something like this without being subpoenaed and the information being disclosed. There was no kind of attorney privilege, right? Like to block that. So a lot of sellers that would thought about going down and like using this market mechanism were not okay with it, because like the ramifications that you're these competitive conversations, these competitive bid asks, discussions were going to be disclosed, and that just kind of made it tough, right? So there was no anonymity kind of in that. It's funny enough, like I talked before I left, really kind of left the patent monetization market. There's a blockchain solution for this, right? That's like, that will keep your anonymity, and that will not be discoverable in U.S. courts or whatever court, right? So I don't think this concept is dead of kind of buying licenses and like, IP and tech transfer via that kind of like that what we were, what we successfully did back then. I think that it will come back at some point, but there'll have to be like some kind of blockchain, like total anonymous bid. Like I can just lob a bid in, right? I can, but if I lob a bid in, John Pryor AI patents are worth $1 million, and I lob a bid in for 200 grand that says like, I'll take a license for 5 years, give me a covenant not to sue, and no one else will be able to kind of like come in and like side tackle that like conversation. But yeah, no, that we've talked at length about kind of like why that didn't continue, because it was like 2011, it was very successful, and after that, it kind of died. So
yeah. And you just piqued my interest there with the whole blockchain thing, because I think blockchain can bring a lot to intellectual property. But one of the biggest issues with intellectual property, in addition to what you just said, is ownership.
Yeah.
And having that really clear on the blockchain is really, really useful. And then proof of origination. I actually had this at this point in time, right? Copyright, trade secret, know-how, bang, date stamp, irrefutable, blockchain. Yeah, I think there's a lot that blockchain can bring in. And likewise, if I'm trading a trade secret with you, it's really tricky, because I don't want to, I reveal it, the value gets diminished. Whereas if I describe it in metadata terms, and then you get to see it once the money's in escrow, bang, bang, bosh, it's a safe transaction. And, I think it can bring a lot of advantages to IP and IP trading, and doing what IP was meant to do, because ultimately IP should be a vehicle with which I can share my ideas, my concepts, my creativity. And he's kind of got lost a little bit in the way through some of the things you've just described there. So I'm kind of conscious we've burnt a lot of time here, Tim, and we haven't really moved through our agenda at all. So I'm kind of thinking this is going to be 2 sessions.
You're really passionate about, like, as you said, like blockchain, music royalties. You just mentioned trade secrets. There's a thing called zero knowledge proofs, right? Like you don't have to expose the trade secret, but you can still buy it, right? So like there's all these cool things that are kind of happening. But yeah, no, I know we've got so much to talk about.
So Tim, I'm just gonna I don't know what's the best use of time, but as we mentioned trade secrets, can we just then jump onto your career in information security and how that kind of came back full circle into IP and trade secrets?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as the market kind of went downhill, started doing a lot more patent valuation, and just kind of like what patents are worth, or which is a little bit of hand wave, right? Like patents are unique assets by definition. But there are ways to value them. Went over to Deloitte, did some IP strategy, really focused on kind of the trade secret market, as you've talked about at length, really became a much stronger way to protect, proprietary data, right? And IP, doing a lot of that, a lot of IP, technology transfer, worked with universities, federal labs, just really got involved further down the road on kind of with that knowledge of what was working in the market and what wasn't working, right? Like trade secrets are working very well, patents not working as well. you know, even these universities, I worked at MIT for a little bit with a joint collaboration, which was great with the MIT Media Lab. You know, if you want to bring technology from this great university and get it out in the market, what do you need to do, right? Like, what do you can't just patent things and people are going to show up on your front door and take a license, right? Like, you actually need to create an ecosystem where you create startups. The startups have other kind of legal vehicles or financial vehicles to transfer that technology out into the market.
Yeah.
And how do you bring that know-how and that expertise with these little companies that are so fragile, right? With these new ideas, with these new kind of concepts that are going to go out to market. So really got involved in that for early on in my Deloitte career. Then I shifted over into cybersecurity just because cybersecurity has been growing so quickly. And there was a need to work over there just from, utilizing, people utilizing headcount and skill at Deloitte. A lot of people shifted into cybersecurity. And it's interesting because I was focused, purely on cybersecurity, big company cybersecurity, a lot of the data analytics, a lot of kind of using data in the companies to understand where risks are, where opportunities are. And then, I went out kind of in the startup world for a little bit. And it's interesting because this, there was this DLP, data loss prevention tools, right? Like a lot of these tools have really matured in the last 5 years that are extremely well positioned to enforce proprietary data, IP data, trade secrets. I worked for one of them, a Canadian company last year. So it's really been this big, it's come full circle, right? Where everything was patents don't work, public disclosure doesn't work. So now we're going to do confidential trade secrets. And the tools to enforce that are there now. And we're seeing them play out in court and we're seeing them play out in monetization, right? So yeah, it's come full circle.
There's so many things, Tim. We got to weave into this conversation because I spoke to a patent professional. I have to admit, and that gives you some context, on Friday last week, and he said, "Oh, this abolition of the non-competes, that's going to play straight back into patents because suddenly trade secrets are not going to, trade secrets going to be less valuable because there's no non-competes down there, and it doesn't quite work like that." And therefore, people will come back around and get back to patents. But I think there's have we spent enough on this call just sort of describing why you and I are kind of down on patents? Because I think I really do want to write the book that says the title is The Great Patent Con, because many of the entrepreneurs and the startup guys think that they get a single patent in the UK. And that's worth £1 million, and they're good to go. And where they've arrived at that conclusion, I've no idea, because they haven't realized the quid pro quo of that deal, that you've got yourself a patent, but you've shared it with the rest of the world. And because you've only got it in the UK, that means every single country elsewhere can utilize that information for their own good, right, and their own benefit. Right. And then if you roll that forward to the era of AI and smart invention machines. When I first got the invention, it's a trade secret because it's secret. And then I put it into a patent application and it's secret for 18 months. And then it's published, but it's still not granted. And Tim, in the UK or in the US, that might take 3 or even 5 years to and fro with the patent office to get a patent that's got all the claims acceptable, right? So after 18 months, I'm public, but in another 3 years, I might be granted. But in that 3 years, my invention growth LLM has taken all that information from my patent application, worked on it, built on it, worked out a way of getting around my patent, and we're in the market with the invention before that patent's even granted. So how do you, in that world, what do you do to protect inventions? Trade secrets, a combination. You can't not have patents, but you've got to have trade secrets, as you said, legal structures, copyright, etc. You got to have a whole host of things. You can't rely on any single one, and you certainly can't rely on a patent, right? I mean,
yeah, no, I mean the patent thing, like we said, it's don't even think about it. I'll just tell you right now. Like if you think you're that like miracle needle in a haystack, like first of all, your idea probably isn't that novel. It's probably not patentable. And the way the patent system is set up, it's not the way to go. Like those cycles and that time you're going to spend in money with patent attorney. I mean, I probably pissed on a lot of people off right now, but it's the truth. And deep down, they know it. It's not worth it. Like you are better off keeping it private. If you've got employees, have non-disclosure agreements, execute, go to market as quick as you can, right? Like the fastest way to monetize a great idea is to is actually to commercialize that idea.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of patents aren't perfect either, right? There's a lot of know-how, right? Like that's developed around the patents, and that is just as important. And like I said, at big university ecosystems like MIT and in California and Pittsburgh and Wisconsin and like all these like big kind of technology schools, right? They figured out like startups are the way to go. Support the startups, keep that know-how, and like equity, right? There's all kinds of incentive carrots and sticks that get the technology out in the market. So I don't think clearly we've talked about how broken the patent system is. It's a global game as well, right? Like not only should you be patenting in the US, if you really want to do it right, you have to patent everywhere. You've got to be able to stage a multi-continent war against a big company to actually scare them. So I just it's trade secrets, as I said, it's kind of the way to go. The patent market's just not there. I mean, and by the way, you should be doing public disclosures, as you mentioned. We were talking a little bit a while ago. The Nokia finish thing, right? Like, don't let a big company patent on top of you. Don't let them squash you. So you need to selectively disclose things so that you can also navigate as a startup as well. So,
what was that? The Kia finish? What's that, Tim?
Oh, you were talking about
Nokia. Sorry, Nokia. Yeah.
They would do public disclosures and finish to some magazine that only four people read, right? Yeah. So it just kind of sits there like a ticking time bomb until a big company needs to invalidate your patents. So
yeah, I mean, I'm a little less black and white maybe than you, but I completely agree with you. There's fundamental weaknesses in the patent system that nobody's telling you about.
Yeah.
And you've got to have you've got to go into this with your eyes wide open. I think you do need patents without any doubt, but you can't just rely on patents. You've got to have a whole blended approach, and trade secrets are probably your best friend, alongside what you said, actually. Getting to market quickly, building up a really fabulously strong brand and reputation that people adhere to, and love and buy from, and will come back to. Really, really difficult, no matter how good the technology is. I was talking to somebody about Zantac, and Tagamet. Way back in the day, SmithKline Beecham had the best treatment for ulcers. Tagamet. Zantac came out, GlaxoSmithKline, same treatment. They just marketed it differently, and they had massive sales compared to Tagamet. So you can't just rely on any one form of IP, and the brand can be just as important as can getting to the market straight away. And building that strategy, I think, is really, really important. So Tim, I'm gonna close today because we have burned through the time really quickly. I want to come back to some of the areas that we haven't really got into at our next talk, and that is going to be around about information security, how that information security and trade secrets comes together, and then particularly on AI, and then really dig deep into what you're doing as well, because I really do feel I don't know enough about information security from a personal perspective. How can people, corporate wise, but from a personal perspective, how can they look to protect themselves, to stop themselves getting phished? I was going to say something I probably shouldn't say because it's confidential. So, Tim, final words over to you, and will you come back again and we'll finish this off?
Yeah. I'd love to talk about like insider threat meets IP meets
Wow. Yeah.
cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
Like I think
Yeah.
that it's a really hot topic. I've been speaking about it. We've been speaking together with kind of people in our peripheral, right? Like that have dealt with insider threat or malicious insider threat. I'd love to come on and talk about that again, because cybersecurity is sitting in the middle of it, because they
Yeah.
are the ones that they're doing the awareness training, they're doing the enforcement, they're doing all the right things, right, to make sure that that turns out the way you want it to turn out. So yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about that. Maybe, you know, we can have Mary come on, who's, you know, an excellent trade secrets practitioner in the
Sure.
market. So, but
I
yeah,
think that's
no,
a great idea. So that's the next talk: insider threat meets IP. What should we call the talk we just had? I'm looking forward to the next one. Insider threat meets IP. There's a lot in there. What are we talking? What are we? Patents aren't what they used to be. That's a bit of a lame title. I've used it a lot recently.
I think it's just you know, IP strategy evolved, right? Like it's where we are now, right? Where are we now, and what should you be doing? And I just think we see a lot of entropy. We see a lot of wasted energy of startups and big companies not using their resources, money, investment, time, you know, focusing on the right things. And I think that's kind of what we got out of, I hope we got out of the last, you know, couple minutes here. But that's where I think we are, right? I think you know, there's all these great technology things coming to market, changes happening faster. You know, what are you doing? What's your strategy? So
Brilliant.
Yeah, let's do it again. Let's dig into kind of this insider, you know, this, which is really the same thing as trade secret, you know, theft.
Yeah, massive though, and lots of governments particularly are really concerned about that. But people, it's not something anybody, because it's, do I really want to admit that my diverse workforce is also a threat? You know, I've just spent ages building my diverse workforce, and now I have to start to look at them and go, ooh, you know, do I trust them all? It's a really difficult one, Tim, for people to get their heads around that next one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's the biggest arguments we've seen is like, you don't trust them, but it's like trust but verify, right? Like in cybersecurity, and that's what we're talking about with the cybersecurity technology that's kind of enveloping the process. So you know, it's got to be that way.
Trust but verify. You got some great catchphrases, slogans that we should trademark, by the way. It's, trust but verify. lean trust, least function. I like that one as well.
That's the only one that's mine. Yeah, trust but verify is very common. Yeah.
Mine is the benefit of hiding sites up front, right? Same sort of thing. All right, Tim, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Look out for the next one, and like, follow, do all the other things. That'll be fantastic. Thanks very much. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.
Cheers.